Welcome to another locker room report with hockey coach, your coach Francis, directly for the beautiful country of Thailand. Tonight, we have not only Marko, but we have another Marko. Marko D'Amico is in the house tonight. Welcome, Marko. Hopefully, you have an amazing, great day so far.
Yeah, I've been having a great day. How about you guys?
Pretty good here. And of course, we have the co-host, Marco Larabé, directly for Hawkesbury, is in the house tonight. Welcome again, Marco, to join us tonight to talk about, of course, the Montreal Canadiens. Marco D'Amico is going to be with us at least one time per month to talking about the Montreal Canadiens. A little bit at the beginning of the show, Marco, you can tell us a bit more your background. Honestly, I believe you've been with us every year since we are built this channel like 4 years ago. So will you come back again with us and tell us a little bit more about your background, and Marco, for the new people we have got in the chat.
Yeah, well, I mean, I started in hockey about 5 to 6 years ago, just writing, being around the rinks, getting to know junior players, and then eventually writing about the Montreal Canadiens. Nowadays, you can catch my work at Montreal Hockey Now as a columnist and reporter. You can also catch me on TSN 690 as co-host or contributor as well. So just a little bit of a focus on younger hockey players, developmental level hockey players, and looking at juniors. That's more my focus. It's what I like to do the most. And in a very young NHL, and I feel like that's the most relevant development for any team, especially with a team like the Montreal Canadiens right now.
Awesome. I believe, I could be wrong, I think you all got busy during summer.
Well, I would say it got busy. Yes, I did get married this summer, but
Congratulations.
that was thankfully. Thank you so much. That was the most amount of hockey people in one sitting that I think I'm ever going to be comfortable with ever again. So yeah, my wedding was something else, but yeah, it's definitely been a fun time, and now obviously with the season starting up again, everyone's kind of excited to get the show on the road. I know you guys are, so a little bit less about the summer, unfortunately, and a little bit more into the fall, I think, is where everybody's looking.
That's awesome. Marco Larabé, if you want to jump on it, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, in between managing in-laws and a wedding, and then managing all the really crazy Habs fans after they picked Reinbacher, that's a lot of that's a pretty busy summer for sure, right? So, listen, Marco, we're really happy to have you. So we're really happy to have you. And listen, like for those of you who don't follow Marco on Twitter, you absolutely should. I consider him to be probably one of the most level-headed kind of members of Habs Twitter out there, often kind of putting out fires and coming in with good insights in sometimes can be inflamed conversations that kind of get out of hand. So kudos to you engaging with fans the way that you do online, and like I said, being kind of a cooler head prevail kind of guy when it comes to these kind of heated discussions that we see on Twitter. So really happy to have you, and really excited to kind of get your take on kind of what's been going on so far in the camp, and of course kind of what we can expect coming up here.
That's great. Marco, going to start right away. I know you follow Montreal a lot, so let's talk about the fact, like, what do you think so far about the rookie camp and the main camp, the transition for the rookie to the main camp, and what they are right now, Montreal? How do you feel about what's happening with Martin St. Louis and his roster so far?
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to get a real sense of where that roster is. I think they're at 30 or 29 players left in camp right now, injuries included. So I think we have a general idea of where things are going. Dating back to rookie camp, which is already 2.5 weeks ago, time flies way too quickly. We had obviously Joshua Roy look really, really good right from the beginning, all the way to the moment he was cut. Really intelligent player. Just reads the ice so well, always positions himself really, really well. For a guy who doesn't have the fastest skating ability, that's super important to me, is that hockey IQ and being able to position yourself and know where to be. So he definitely stood out to me, and will probably have a really good season in Laval. Owen Beck did more Owen Beck things. Very sound two-way player, very aware of his surroundings. Still kind of missing a little bit of that offensive flair, but sending him back to the OHL this year is probably going to help him a lot in that department. Um, from a forward perspective, it was a little quiet from other than those two guys. I would say Emil Heineman impressed later into camp. Didn't have a really good rookie camp showing, but really kind of turned on the Jets, so to speak, in the last two games that he played. You're starting to see that physical edge, that speed, that shot. I'll be interested to see if we see him one more time before the final cuts on Saturday. And then in terms of defensemen, I mean, Logan Mailloux obviously stood out in a big way. Started his first game very rocky, and then
F1
just consistently
deciding
worked
to
his
go
way up.
F1.
Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
definitely a shock for an individual that hasn't played that many games to kind of come in, get settled. But once he got settled, you saw a more mature understanding of the game. And you saw him learning rather quickly, which is really important when it comes to development. Guys that are able to pick up on reads real quick, alter the way that they position themselves, get a little bit more aggressive on the gap control. That's what you're looking for from a player like him. That's why you really kind of appreciate that kind of an output. Then you look at a guy like William Trudeau, who, granted, is a year older. Incredible overall play in terms of defense, offense, transition. He has it all. The only thing that William Trudeau doesn't have is a first round pick attached to his name. Because if he were a higher pick, there would be way more hype for this player. Just an intelligent guy. Wasn't even supposed to play for the Laval Rocket last year and ended up being their number one defenseman by the end of the season because he worked his way up, sees his opportunities, and again, plays a very intelligent game. So for me, there was no surprise with him. I kind of expected him to be in the mix for top pair in Laval, potentially one of the first call-ups on defense. But the one player I didn't think was going to be that kind of a standout was Matthias Norlinder. And
Yep.
when you look at a player like him, especially what happened last year, there was injuries, and then obviously Trudeau passed him. Nicolas Baudin also passed him. So things got a little bit hectic in Laval for that section of time. But he ended the season quite well in Laval. I remember watching a few games to end the season, and then those two playoff games in Laval. I liked what I saw, and I kind of had an outside thought of, well, the Canadiens are looking for a power play guy. And lo and behold, he's really seized the opportunity. I think what's made the difference with him, though, is more decision making. He's taking more tempered decisions with the puck. He's not forcing plays like he did in his first couple of camps with Montreal. He's scanning, then executing. And even when there's any kind of pressure on him, any kind of execution issues, he'll always just tail back and use his skating to his advantage. It's a more intelligent, cerebral Matthias Norlinder, and that's a defenseman that, if he continues to play the cards right, could potentially crack the roster for the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, sometimes with a player like Matthias Norlinder, there's that phenomena where certain players actually end up playing better with NHL professional players rather than AHL players. Maybe that's kind of what we're seeing with Norlinder, right? Is just being able to do those quick outlets to players that are actually in position versus not being in position in the AHL. So great overview there, Marko. Like my question here, is the focus of most of the camp has been on, I guess, what I would call the horse race, like everything you just described, right? Like who's going to crack the lineup, this player versus that player, and that's really the sexy stuff, right? Like that's what everybody talks about. Here we try to go a bit deeper. Like we fancy ourselves a bit hockey nerd kind of crowd, right? So those are really sexy stories. But I guess for you being like out there as a somebody that's doing all this content, it must be really difficult for you to kind of like hone in on what stories to focus on, right? Because there's so many talking heads, there's so much content, including this show, right? So how do you go about kind of like choosing a story that you think is going to be relevant for your audience? Like we're just curious about your process and about how you kind of decide where to focus on your articles or your hits on TSN.
Yeah, when it comes to any form of content plan, that it be reporting, that it be communications, marketing, you name it, it all comes down to timing availability of the information, and relevancy in the time frame that you're using it. So you can always have ideas on the back burner and get information that you can continuously try to feed to that topic, but it's not the right time. So a case in point with the Montreal Canadiens over the last 3 years, it's been really interesting to deal with their cap situation because they've been up to the cap, over the cap, Carey Price, Shea Weber, what's going on? And so you have that kind of information that you could potentially just put out at any point, but it's not relevant. And I feel like that's journalism, is you need to strike where the iron's hot. Some will kind of go back to the same tropes every single time because they know it works. So you're going to look at players on waivers. You're going to be looking at potential trade candidates. That's all speculative kind of journalism. That's kind of, shooting the shit with your friends in the basement kind of journalism. Whereas more, I would say, investigative journalism would be going out and trying to do an interview with coach, player, teammate of a certain player and have kind of an extrapolated idea of how you're going to talk about that player after the fact. So, the way that I kind of like to view my points are in three ways: actuality, looking at the way that teams are developing in that moment. So if we're talking about the Montreal Canadiens, obviously an article on Matthias Norlinder, obviously an article on Logan Mayu's camp, etc. But also in the background thinking, okay, well, once this dies down, you need to have something original. So that's where you come up with interviews. You start working the phones. You start wanting to talk to people. So, talking to prospects is something that I do basically year round. So setting up interviews with them so that you have that kind of content to fill in the gaps when you don't know what to write about. And it creates news and information of its own, which other people can then piggyback off and write some more. So it's that transferring of information and that timing that's the most important for me. So there's no set process. It's honestly as simple as I'm going to wake up in the morning, and if something really comes to get me, I'll do the research necessary to put out something coherent and informative and unique so that people can kind of learn from it and then take it on as their own if they want to talk about it with other people or if they want to write their own stories about it.
That's
That says a
awesome.
lot,
Great.
right? Like,
Go ahead.
that says a lot, right? Like, it's a saturated marketplace, right, for Montreal Canadiens. So kudos to you to always kind of find your own voice and find it's providing value to your readers, to the fans, and giving information that everybody finds valuable. So thank you for that. Coach, did you want to follow up on that one?
Yeah, I want to go on the same note. I'm just curious, Marko, about the fact, like, what you are access now. If you follow like Arpen Bazoo or those or Godin or Co1, everything like that. But what are you access now for? Now you work with the TSN and on your website, on the Twitter account. So what can you do? What you cannot do, or whatever it is? I'm just curious about this.
You have
Yeah, so
credentials
the Montreal
now?
Canadiens have a staggered approach to the way that you get access. So with TSN 690, it's more of a contributor. So I wouldn't be the one that would be necessarily doing the big interviews or going to the rooms. I'd be the one coming in to replace. I'd be the one coming in to talk about the team with them as kind of a third person on the panel. So nothing in an official capacity. They'll always kind of have their two guys that will do most of the accredited stuff. With Montreal Hockey Now, we do have an accreditation, but because Montreal Hockey Now is so much of a younger platform than, say, the traditional TSNs, RDSs, TVA Sports, all the various radio stations, be they English and French, it's so crowded in the Montreal Canadiens media that the Montreal Canadiens comms team doesn't know what to do with all these people. So they stagger the way that they give out accreditation. So some people have access to the room interview with players. Those are the traditional medias. Then you have new age medias like Montreal Hockey Now, where you get to go to the games. You still get to interview the players, but you don't get to go into the locker room because there's too many journalists already in there. There's about, I believe, north of 40 that are allowed, which is, with Toronto,
crazy.
Ridiculous. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And I understand Montreal is obviously a city where they follow the Canadians like it's a religion. So I get that. And then there are some that are on the periphery entirely that don't get to attend the games, don't get to interview players, but can sometimes ask, "Hey, can I get X person or Y person on a podcast?" And that's usually what I've done. The Montreal Canadiens have been really gracious with that. Obviously, everyone knows Chantal Machabé. Really, really interesting individual to work with. Really fair, and obviously wants to allow journalists to tell stories and really shine a light on these players and these individuals much more than in the past. So it's been a really fun process. And as media kind of changes, I think they're ready for that change in approach as well.
Well done about
Absolutely.
that. Go ahead, Marco.
Yeah, that's having the credential is important, and it makes sense. That's a lot of human beings to accommodate. So it's good that you're in the rotation, and good for you, man. Like we've all been following kind of your ascension, and wish you all the best as you continue to kind of build up those credentials. So, well, we were just talking about the horse race and training camp, and obviously that was kind of the main focus, right? Who's gonna take that last seed, and of course those are all sexy stories like I was saying, but one thing I think a lot of people aren't really exploring, and maybe we'll hear a little bit more about it now that they're off to Tremblant, they're going to be actually closer to their roster, and we're going to actually hear about power play practice and stuff like that, is in your opinion, like, have you seen anything so far that's different from Saint Louis and his coaching staff in terms of tactics from last year? Like, we haven't really delved into that much, because there's a lot of talk. Like, there's a lot of people that are critical of the man on man kind of system that Saint Louis kind of uses right now, especially with the young decor. It might be a little bit tricky. You know how those systems kind of break down. If one guy loses his guy, then the whole thing kind of breaks down. So I'm wondering if you're seeing or anticipating anything different tactically from St. Louis and the coaching staff this year going into the new season.
I think from a defensive standpoint, they're just trying to get them to work on their timing still, gap control, timing, really trying to attack that open space and take away the open space from the opposition. I think that is the key. So when I look at him trying to instill something different, I think they're going to try to continue instilling what they tried to do last year. What's important to keep into consideration with the defensemen is 70% of them are sophomores this year. So there is a risk for sophomore jinxes here. There is a risk for a little bit of regression, but that's completely normal, and that's to be understood when you have such a young defensive brigade and even more youngsters coming. So to me, it's about getting the basics set in place. I wouldn't see a tactical change to that degree, at least not with the youngsters. I think that it's about stabilizing them, ensuring that they get their bases right, and then allowing them to reach another level. And as good as they were all last year in flashes, I don't think any of them are there yet in terms of the former rookies from last year. I don't think any of them are there yet where both ends of their games is so what's the word you would use here? So sound
Polished,
that
yeah,
you
and
would,
polished.
move to another level. And I think that's kind of the issue. Caden Gooley's probably the closest. His defensive game is really refined, and his offensive game is underrated. But there's still aspects on both ends of the ice that he would need to work on if they were to move away from man-to-man coverage, because zone coverage comes with its own kind of challenges, and it becomes very difficult for defensemen that, for example, are stationary as opposed to extremely mobile. And how does that work with your forwards? And do they have centers that stay very back to help with that zone defense? Right now, they don't. Maybe they will in the future when a guy like Owen Beck is ready. So things you got to keep into consideration. What I think is interesting in the St. Louis mindset that's different from last year is that he's looking to instill a sense of accountability that maybe wasn't there last year. So it's not a situation where they're going to bench a guy. It's not a situation where someone's going to make a mistake and you're not playing anymore tonight. But I think there's going to be a little bit more follow-up this year and a lot more video time with these kids, and just allowing them to kind of absorb the knowledge that they've gained from making that mistake. And I think, It's the best thing that you could possibly learn from as an athlete or as anything in life. Failure is the best teacher. And I feel like now is the time. And I feel like he is really in that situation where he's going to allow them to fail, but you're going to see growth by the end of the year. And that's what he said. It may not be a linear path to up, but by the time you connect the two dots from beginning to end, it's going to be a straight line.
Totally. Absolutely get it. Great response, Marko. So yeah, I guess another thing we, just in response to kind of, how fans react to these details, right? Like you're hearing people wanting, Alex Burrows to be fired after they haven't even practiced the power play and they go 0 for in a game, So that's kind of part of my next question, which is, you're, like I said earlier, you're really engaged on Twitter with a lot of fans, but like you have your finger on the pulse, right? Of kind of how you think fans are feeling. Like at this point of the rebuilding going into the season, like how do you estimate the fan base overall is feeling about going into the season? Do you think that they have measured expectations, like kind of what you just described? You hope that they have kind of those things in mind, understand that these still a young decor, sophomore jink, like you mentioned. So what's your take on the Habs fan base right now? Like, should we hold our fingers and maybe ready to use the mute button a lot on Twitter over the next couple months? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a difficult thing to talk about overall. We're talking about the biggest fan base in hockey. No disrespect to Toronto, but when you're looking at the amount of individuals, the types of individuals in a fan base, is really difficult to say what one or another would do. My personal take has been in all of my interactions is that a lot of people are very much on board with the rebuild. I think the issue is simply the how. And that goes all the way back to the draft, obviously, with the debate over drafting a guy like Matvei Michkov, to the way that the Canadiens are going about keeping veterans in place versus doing a full tear down like other teams have. Every person. That's the beauty of a rebuild. Everybody is in favor of a rebuild unless you don't do it their way, and that is the problem. All North American sport, all of it, and you can extend it to all sport. But North American sport, rebuilds are a thing because of drafts and the way the collective bargaining agreements work, and everybody's always on board for one. No one is ever on board for a rebuild that doesn't go exactly the way they planned it, and I think that is where I need to, or I like to bring it forth with a little bit of, let's see what happens. Because if the Canadiens, for example, one of the reasons a lot of people wanted to go and draft a guy like Matvei Michkov was the absence of elite forward talent. Well, that problem's not going to go away this season. It's not, that they drafted him or not. And there are 3, if not 4, really high-end forwards in the 2024 draft. So there is a pro and a con to this situation, where pro, they could surprise a lot of people, and the players that you didn't think were elite become elite, like a Kirby Dach, for example. Or they don't, finish in the bottom ends of the standings again this year, and end up picking one of the top forwards in this draft, which, to be completely honest with you, 4 of them look like top line players already. So it could be very interesting to see. But when you have those options, it's from an analyst perspective, it's a no lose situation. From a fan's perspective, it all depends on your perception. It all depends on your own personal timeline, and all depends on what you think good looks like. And I feel like that's where I kind of have to bring that nuance, because no one has the truth. Time will tell, but in the moment, it's about understanding the moves. And if some of them start to defer or become inconsistent with the overall ideology, well, that's when you can start becoming, a little bit critical. And I think that that's something that we saw fans do this summer, because not drafting Michkov theoretically would go against what the Montreal Canadiens would be looking to do, become this fast scoring dynamic team. But that's probably because there's probably more to come than meets the eye. The rebuild didn't stop on June 28th. The rebuild will continue far past June 28th, 2023. I'd argue probably into June 28th, 2025 at the earliest. So it's just about being patient.
You're a young man, Marko, so you can wait this out, man. You're still a young dude, so you can wait out this long rebuild. But Coach and I, we're getting up there, right? So
There's
we might feel
there's two sides to that because I'm a young man. Cool. I've only seen one cup and I was 3 years old, right? So like y'all have seen Stanley Cups. So like it's not the end of
I
the
saw
world.
two.
Like you've seen the team hoist a cup. My
Yeah.
generation of fans hasn't. And so like I can
It's true.
understand their impatience because it's like Pittsburgh's won 3 in our life or 4 in my lifetime. Detroit's won 4 in my lifetime or 3. Why isn't Montreal even close? They're closer than a lot of other teams, to be completely honest. Although, Stanley Cup final, Eastern Conference final, but no cigar. So I get it, but the sins of the past were rushing a process that needed way more time than it was given. And I feel like give it the time it needs because even if they don't pick the player you like in the certain draft, as long as they develop them better than anything they have done over the last 25 years, you're already ahead. And that's what they need to get to at this point is churning out top end players that simply don't just come from being their first round pick. They did a good job of doing that for, I'd say, a good 4 or 5 years between 2005 and 2010, and then just dropped off. And I feel like they need to get back to that on top of hitting on their top picks.
Yeah, like that's the kind of the highlight of the Timmins era, right? Is hitting on those kind of late picks like Gallagher and Subban, and so you hope Lane Hudson is kind of like the beginning of a new streak of hitting in the second round, hitting things out of the park. So let's hope that trend continues. Coach, did you have a follow up?
Yeah, we're going to go. If you don't mind, Marco, we're going to go to the people in the chat. You have a couple of people. Most of the questions are about the roster for the upcoming season.
Sure.
Marco, then we go. So maybe you can give us a little bit what you're thinking, what could happen for the next couple of days. And the first one's coming from in our tap. They ask you how are the Canadiens going to trim down their roster before next week? I think at the beginning of the show you said 28, 29 players. We that's including a Whiteman and Devorak, so that's approximately at 26. I have my own ID, but I would love to hear yours. What do you think Ken Hughes, Martin St. Louis, and Jeff Gordon are going to take kind of decision for the next couple of days?
Well, I think the one thing to consider first and foremost when they're making decisions is who is waiver exempt. That's the number one for me because that's already a negative in the players column because either that player has to really outperform the veterans to be able to have to put someone who's waiver eligible on waivers, or it's an easy out and we'll see you soon if there's injuries and you're going to Laval, right? So I feel like for a guy like Emil Heineman, for example, Emil Heineman versus Jesse Ullinen, I found that both have been basically equal during this training camp, but I think Jesse Ullinen might make the team and Emil Heineman might get sent down to Laval because Heineman is waiver exempt. Ullinen would more than likely get taken on waivers because although he may not be one of the starting 12, he still put up a 35-point pace last year on one of the worst teams in the NHL. So what could he do if given the chance elsewhere? And that's what teams are going to be looking for when they're looking at a waiver wire. They're looking at guys with NHL experience. He's got about 40, 50 games already. So that to me might solve that debate. The real debate for me is on defense. And I think, you have a 3-man race right now for the last spot, in my opinion, because I think it's pretty obvious. Matheson, Savard, Xhekaj, Kovacevic, Gouli, Harris in no particular order. And then you have Justin Barron, waiver exempt, Matthias Norlinder, waiver exempt, Gustav Lindstrom, subject to waivers, but not necessarily the biggest loss, considering that they're expecting Logan Mailloux to play hockey games this season in the NHL.
He didn't have a strong camp either, right? Like Lidstrom didn't have a good camp
at all. And I feel like when you look at the outcome, I wouldn't be surprised if Justin Barron is sent down to Laval to kind of work on getting a little bit more aggressive in the defensive zone and playing the man with a little bit more oomph, let's say, and exposing a guy like Gustav Lindstrom to waivers, because if Bernard Docker is not being taken on the waiver wire a former first-round pick from the Ottawa Senators, and also a right shot D, then the chances of Lindstrom being taken are equally as small. So to me,
Yeah.
I think you can make that risk. And if Norlinder is the better player, then you keep a guy like Matthias Norlinder, because either he makes the team and you give him a shot in the rotation and you rotate a defenseman like they did to start the year last year, and he carves a name for himself in the NHL, or it doesn't work out and maybe you have to send him to Laval for a little bit and see if he can work out some of those kinks in his game. But to me, I think it's a feel-good story for the Canadiens, and Martin St. Louis wants to play a certain way on the back end. And right now they have a lot of defensemen that are very similar in the sense that they're two-way, not necessarily super defensive, not necessarily super offensive. They're jacks of all trade, but not one
creating
of the
offensive.
youngsters excels on the power play. And so I think that's
Yeah.
where Matthias Norlinder can kind of help, because yeah, their first wave of the power play is Mike Matheson, and you can wash your hands of that. He's on the first wave of the power play. But who's on the second wave? Because that's going to be extremely important this year. Everyone's eyes are going to be on that first power play. It's who's going to be on the second power play, the Slavkovsky, probably Alex Newhook. You throw in a Norlinder, and then things start to develop from there in terms of that core. So now you have two waves that are actually a threat. That may result in a little bit more scoring on the man advantage. And that's what the Canadiens are looking for, because over the last 5 years, if you combine the last 5 years of power play percentages, the Canadiens are dead last. And that needs to
Oh,
change.
yeah. But so I think I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that scenario. But as long as they do keep the rotation moving on pretty routinely, right? Because if you ask me, who do I want the seventh D to be that's just going to be sitting there eating popcorn and hot dogs, then I'd much rather it be Lidstrom, right? Like, we don't really have anything invested in his development or anything like that. So I don't mind if he sits for 10 games, or doing whatever. But you're right. Like, if Norlinder, if they can actually come up with a rotation that makes sense, he's getting some minutes on the second power play unit, I have no issue with him. Like, I think he's looked good. Obviously, maybe not enough to play consistently in your top six yet, just not enough consistency there yet, or not enough of a sample size. But if he's going to sit there for more than 3-4 games, that's where I get a bit iffy with it.
I understand that. I do, but this is a player that's played pro. This is a player that, has run power plays with former NHLers. Like, to me, Norlinder, it's basically sink or swim, because if he doesn't make it this year, sending him to Laval is not going to do much for him, because by April, you might have Lane Hudson jumping ship. By next year, you're going to have Adam Engstrom probably jumping over from Sweden. There is not going to be any room. So either you need to know what he can do now, either to pencil him in into the future or prop him up as a trade chip, or you need to move on from the player. I think at this point, they're trying to see what they have, and they're going to give him some rope, because everybody else is going to be dealing with their own thing. You think about, him sitting in the stands eating popcorn for a bit. Flip side for you is, look at Laval's roster in terms of defensemen this year, and all the attention in terms of development that is going to be required there. You have William Trudeau, sophomore. You have Jaden Struble, rookie. You have Logan Mailloux, rookie. Justin Barron's probably going to be sent down. He's probably going to be their major focus in terms of development. So you have so much of the Canadiens development team's focus already on those four players. Matthias Norlinder, like last year, will probably get lost in the shuffle. Whereas if you keep him in Montreal, he's around he's around NHL players. He's practicing with NHL players. The moment there's an injury, he's in the lineup. He already knows the systems. He's already aware of what the coaches expect. It's an easier way to jump into the lineup that way and stay in the lineup, in my opinion, than to let it go. And I feel like that's the danger in sending down a player like that, because it's sink or swim for Matthias Norlinder. And I think he understands that. I think everybody understands that, especially when you got a guy like Lane Hudson, who is expected to run the power play for years to come. You got to show that you can fit in that system, even when all these guys are coming that everyone has penciled ahead of you. So if the Canadiens want to commodify the depth that they have on the left side of their defense like they have over the last 2 years. To me, this is a better way of doing it, having him in the NHL, getting him in a couple of games. And if he becomes trade bait, he becomes trade bait. And if he becomes a regular, he becomes a regular. But if he becomes a regular, it's because somebody else became trade bait. And that's a really good problem to have.
Great point about that. Would you like to see take any left defenseman? Let's start with Trudeau to maybe Laval to play on the right D, or do you feel like it's not necessary? They should keep the position side because I think Trudeau would maybe one other prospect could have a better chance to make the lineup for the Montreal Canadiens.
It's something that I thought about. There was a time where William Trudeau played in junior, and in heavy situations, he used to play on the right side next to Vegas Golden Knights prospect Lucas Cormier. And he had the mobility and the intelligence to really kind of excel on the right side when given the opportunity, but he really preferred to stay on his natural left side because it helped him in his transition and moving the puck out quickly. And that's what really makes him good in Laval is that he plays on his strong side and he's able to move the puck up real quick. You didn't notice him playing on the right side at camp. To me, that was pretty telling. They had the opportunity to put him there, they didn't. So I don't think that's in the cards. And I think the way that the team has kind of built out the right side of their defense, I mean, you have Jonathan Kovacevic, who's going to be up there, not going to move. And then if you look in Laval, you're going to have a Barron, you're going to have a Mayu. As of next season, you're probably going to have a David Reinbacher and all that situation as well. So even the right side is going to get pretty contested, not to the point of what the left side looks like, but at least from what Canadians fans have been used to over the last 5-6 years, much more congested than they've seen as of late. So now you're going to have a lot of these guys kind of pushing for spots. That's if there's no trades. So the way that I see it, I don't try to think about the future. Let it come to you.
I think that's where kind of I want us to go, right? Is, probably the biggest move that Hughes has made since he's been here was, doing exactly what you just described, right? Like taking like an asset that, that they had, an overage of, like on lefty, which is Romanoff, and moving that for a substantial piece for Kirby Dach, right? So I think we've talked a lot about it on this channel. It's been all over the place. If so, who do you think? Because I think the big question is, if you have all this depth, how far? And you mentioned this earlier, that the big missing piece in the rebuild is a elite forward, right? Like an elite, skillful offensive forward. You may get one in the draft. I'm not sure they fall all the way down to a top 5. I see them more maybe finishing 8th or something like that if they stay healthy. So they might be kind of in the same, with our luck with the draft, like they always seem to be, that we picked first when there wasn't an elite talent. And then when there was elite talent, we finished one spot just outside of that window where we could have gotten that elite talent. So, so I guess the question is, like, to liquidate the surplus, of left D, how far are you willing to go with that? There's been some talk of, do you move Caden Gooley, who that might be a controversial thing to say, right? Because we're all penciling him in as a number 1. But since you have so much depth there, right? And you could argue, just being a pessimist, Caden Gooley hasn't played a complete season in what, 3 years? Like, he was injured last year. He didn't have a full season in the WHL before that. So, kind of hedging your bets a little bit with Gooley, as his value is like probably as high as it's ever going to be, potentially. Is he, or which left defenseman would you use to target a trade with a club to really pull in an elite offensive forward if you're not able to get it in the draft and move this rebuild to the next stage that we need to?
Mike Matheson. And
I don't know if he gets
that's an unpopular choice, but Mike Matheson to me, he's at the prime of his career. He's really at the top of his career. He's got all the momentum in the world. And when this team is going to need to compete, he is going to be requiring a new contract. And that's where things are going to get messy, because now you're going to have all this capital that you invested, this new management team invested in left shot D that can do exactly what he does, like an Adam Engstrom, like a Lane Hudson, along with what he already had in place with a Caden Gooley. So you're already stacked on the left side still. If you can take that player and monetize that in a way where you can go and get yourself a prime time offensive player, nobody is off the table for me. Nobody would be off the table for me if
But you're
I
not
were the
getting
one running. And you can get here's an example, like the Kings going out to get Kevin Fiala from the Minnesota Wild. Nothing would be off the table because that is a point per game elite talent that you simply have to really kind of luck out to draft. And so if you are able to trade your excess, especially excess that will eventually price itself out of your team, that to me would make a ton of sense. And it would probably require less assets to trade a guy like Matheson in a move like that sooner than later because his contract isn't going to last forever. That to me would make a ton of sense in trying to acquire top six, if not top level talent, because the way he's been playing has been close to a top pair defenseman. And I know that's hard for a lot of people to let go, but you have to make the
I'm
choice
not afraid
between
to let
making
Matheson go. I'm
Gooley
not.
and
I'm
Lane
not.
Hudson.
I'm not wincing because I'm afraid to let Matheson go. I'm wincing because I'm not sure he fetches you, an elite top
Not
pair
at
or
all.
top line forward, like so. And packages are hard, right? Like it's maybe if you package Matheson with like like a Bergevin used to say, those PS PlayStation kind of trades, you can try to build it up that way. It's hard though, right? Like to me, I think Gooley is their best shot at doing something like that.
If you want to do a 1-for-1 thing, Gooley's your best shot. Like
Yeah.
I know there were a lot of people that were debating whether or not it was worthwhile trading Caden Gooley in a small package for a guy like, for example, Trevor Zegras.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people being attached to Caden Gooley, but the reality is that you probably have two defensemen at least that are on par potential wise to Caden Gooley. You have nobody in the system that is close to what a guy like Trevor Zegras can do. So that's why you have to consider it. No one's saying that Caden Gooley is in any way, shape, or form expendable. Anybody's tradable. Heck, Wayne Gretzky was traded how many times? It's a question of asset management in this case and not falling in love with a player too much that it impacts your judgment. We've seen in real time what happens if a general manager lets emotions kind of run the ship.
Yes.
You wind up with one guy making 4 years worth 6.5 million and dropping off the next day, and another one signed for I believe 7 or 6 years at $6.5 million with a no movement clause. So never fall in love with your players is the key that I would say. So when you're looking at Caden Gooley, when you're looking at, I would even venture to think about, a guy that the most sense to me to be moved, unfortunately, is Jordan Harris in terms of the slow process. If you had to trade a kid, Jordan Harris and William Trudeau do a lot of the same. And I feel like William Trudeau's younger by, I believe, 2 years, if not 3, from Jordan Harris. So he's probably, at this rate, he may overtake him. That's a guy that I could see other teams being interested in because the play has always been there. And so if you're not going to trade Gooley and you don't want to touch Jekka because of the physical stuff, that's a guy you could look at.
When you talk about Mike Madison, sooner, so what would be your time frame to trade Mike Madison?
I would probably look into next offseason. That would be the way that I look at it. And the simple reasoning is that contract is worth so much right now because of the way that he's performing while making less than $5 million a season. It's a cap treasure that the Canadiens aren't necessarily maximizing because they don't need the cap space. They really, really don't, especially as of next year. They're going to have some guys coming off the books. The cap is potentially going up to 87, if not 88 million. So they'll have the leeway, but other teams won't. And that's why if you can get a top 3 defenseman, if not higher at this point, depending on how well he plays, again, for less than 5 million, that's a massive deal. That's teams are going to need that, especially if they're on the last legs. And there are a couple of teams in the NHL that are slowly getting to their last legs that are going to need that kind of defensive help. That may be able to churn out one of their offensive players that are maybe more on the more expensive side for them, but not for the Canadiens. And that could make a ton of sense. And so there are a plethora of teams right now that are kind of really close and may not be able to keep that balance with other restricted free agents coming to term. That's where I think the Canadiens can pounce next year. But again, I wouldn't be disappointed if he wasn't traded in the offseason. Not a player that I want to trade, but if the Canadiens are negotiating for a top piece at forward, it wouldn't surprise me if he was in the discussions.
So
Well
our
said.
thumbnail for this episode is going to be Marko D'Amico wants to trade goalie. Is that okay if we use that for the thumbnail for the video?
Please don't. Please don't.
We have a few people, guys, who want to carry on this. We have about 15 minutes for Marko to be with us. So, Marko, we're going to go through the question we have in the chat, and then we're going to consist together after that, if you don't mind. Very quickly, Gary, can we ask you, do you think Martin St. Louis' mindset is to make the playoff or not?
I think that Martin St. Louis is a winner, and his mindset is always to make the playoffs. I think reality eventually sets in, like it did last year. But if you're not going into a season thinking that you're going to make the playoffs, even if you're not, then you're not doing it right. You're not instilling a culture, in my opinion, that would be conducive to long-term success. If you're coming into the season thinking, "Oh, it's going to be another long season," we're gonna tank the season for Macklin Celebrini or Cole Eiserman, then you're not. I don't think you're the guy for the job, especially in this market. You need to be always pushing, even if the general manager isn't putting a team in front of you that is necessarily a playoff team.
Awesome. Next question. A lot of people talk about Caden Primo situations, a bit like you talk about Linkstrom, Barron earlier, or Island and Eneman. But what do you feel is going to happen with Caden Primo or the next move for the next couple of days for the goaltending situation?
Goaltending is a little bit of a tricky situation. I know the Canadiens are trying to work a trade right now to kind of free up their goaltending situation and ensure that they can keep two goaltenders without losing one to waivers. Unfortunately, the goalie market is very, very, very cold. So not necessarily the most active, but they're still in the process of trying to weigh everything out. However, we've seen a couple of goalies over the last 2 days go unclaimed that are in the same boat, I would say, as a Caden Gooley. Not Caden Gooley, Caden Primo. Too many Cadens on this team. And so if you factor in the goalies that are remaining, the Canadiens are thinking about this a little bit long term, right? If you look at the Toronto Maple Leafs, they have Martin Jones, who played really well against the Canadiens. If he hits waivers, I am convinced that he's gone to Tampa Bay or Colorado. I just convinced. So that takes one team out of the equation. There are a couple of other veteran goaltenders that are going to be hitting waivers on top of that could make a whole lot more sense. So other teams already have their two goaltenders. It makes absolutely no sense for anybody else to go and get a goaltender like Primo, especially considering, unlike Martin Jones, he signed beyond this season. So you're not only having to create a roster spot for him this year, but also next year. So I think the Canadiens are waiting to the very last moment where there's a rush of goaltenders at the same time, and Caden Primo can kind of fall through that crack and not go unclaimed. That's if they can't work out a trade.
Do you think the contract of Primo make also another red flag for any other team because he's carrying a 3-year contract, 7, 8, and $1 million?
Yeah, well, I mean that's kind of the situation, right? Is that you have to commit to that player if you're going to take him on waivers. Yes, you can throw him back on waivers, but what if nobody claims him? After that, he's in your minor league team and he's taking up a contract slot for you for the next 3 years. So these are things you got to be mindful of. And although he is young and still has the potential, so do other goalies. And right now, the teams that are looking for goalies aren't looking for young goalies. They're looking for experienced goaltenders that can back up, a number one in a situation of injury. And that's Colorado and Tampa Bay. And so I don't necessarily think that Caden Primo would be the kind of goalie that would interest them, but I think the Canadians don't want to take any chances.
Great point about that. Of course, Luciano talked about Philip Mazar the last couple of days. Some rumor talk about the fact like maybe he will refuse to go to OHL, maybe try to go to be loaned somewhere around. What do you feel about when, and maybe give us a little bit with your expectation or what happened with Philip Mazar for the last 12 months since he got drafted by the Montreal Canadiens 26 overall pick?
Yeah, well, Philip Misher had a really hot start to his OHL career with the Kitchener Rangers. I think he had like 12 points in 5 games or something. And then that team fell apart. Absolutely fell apart. He went to the World Juniors, put up some really good numbers on the World Juniors. Was their best offensive player, in my opinion, for Slovakia. And when he came back, the Kitchener Rangers went through a ridiculous amount of trades, and the chemistry was non-existent. Every time I would talk to him, he'd be like, "It's really hard to kind of get in. Everything's always changing. I'm tired. I've been playing so much. This is the most amount of hockey I've ever played." So he looked tired. This year, he didn't necessarily stand out at camp, but what he did really well. He was really fast with the puck. He was really quick in transition, and I feel like if Laval wasn't as stacked as it was with players, because it is absolutely ridiculous how many players they have there under contract. We're talking about sending second and third round picks of the Montreal Canadiens to Trois-Rivières, to Three Rivers, because there's just no place in Laval. So it makes the decision a little bit easier for Kent Hughes and JF Ull in Laval in sending him back to the OHL. But I could be convinced in seeing him go, for example, to play in Europe, be it in Switzerland and Sweden. Uh, that could make some sense if he absolutely wants to play at the pro level and doesn't feel he has anything left to learn in the OHL. I could understand that, but not everything is set in stone. He's currently being played on the right wing in a top 9 role at the Laval Rocket training camp, and they're going to give him every opportunity to make the team. And if he does beat somebody out, well, that's the meritocracy that they're looking to bring in. And the player he beats out will probably be either riding the pine or playing with the Lions in Trois-Rivières. So that's the benefit of having a 3-tiered development system. And the Canadians are going to do their best to take advantage of that. But do I think he's going to play in the NHL? I would say probably a 75% chance that he plays NHL games. He's too smart a player. He's too quick a hockey player. I think he'll need time, but I think he'll be an NHL player or at least play a meaningful amount of NHL games.
Question for Ron said, do you think Suzuki and Caulfield will become elite players for Montreal and the league? Forget the rest, but that's what he's thinking. We ask you this question about this. I'm a really, the last couple of days, I defend myself about what is an elite player and what Suzuki can become, but I would like to hear from you.
Yeah, so I already think that Cole Caulfield is an elite goal scorer in the NHL, so that's a yes. To me, elite is being one of the best at a specific thing that you do. And so Cole Caulfield, I think we can all agree, is going to be one of the elite goal scorers in the NHL. He was scoring at an elite pace last year before shutting down with a shoulder injury. And ironically enough, in the last 3 weeks, where his shoulder injury was supposedly the worst, he upped his scoring trend. He had actually increased it by, I think, almost half a goal per game. So it goes to show you that if he's 100%, you can expect a guy that could potentially put up 40 goals or more. That to me is elite. Nick Suzuki, on the other hand, is a completely different story. I think Nick Suzuki is a number one center. I wouldn't say by default, because obviously, 66 points especially with the rush that the Montreal Canadiens had last year is impressive and dignified of being maybe an average low end first line center. But for him to be elite, he really has to take it up a notch. And I'm not just talking offensively, I'm talking about defensively. He may play on the penalty kill, but at 5-on-5, he was getting killed last year. The advanced metrics are extremely telling. It was all offense, no defense. And if the Canadiens are going to have success long term, he's got to shore up that defense without sacrificing the offense. And I think that's what's going to make him an elite player. He has to do that, in my eyes, to reach that point, because I think, in my honest opinion, Kirby Dach is actually closer to doing that than Nick Suzuki is. And that's kind of the argument that we're seeing right now, is who has the higher potential, because I wouldn't be surprised if Kirby Dach and Nick Suzuki are neck and neck this year in terms of production, because I think that a guy like Kirby Dach has found that extra level. Do I think he'll be elite? Maybe not, but I think he might be right under that. And if you have two players in that vicinity at center, you already have a good base. It's just a question of being able to turn it around and add more elite talent to that.
Few people
Yeah.
ask always this question to me the last couple of days about, do you split or not Suzuki with Caulfield for Doc is Caulfield?
Eventually I would. And I know a lot of people will be like, oh my God, they have such great chemistry. Great, absolutely. You have options now. You can do what you need to do, and you can always go back to them if you need to. But at a certain point in time, I think a guy like Kirby Dach would be a better playmaking style, his size, speed, skating, for a guy like Cole Caulfield, where a guy like Nick Suzuki was more methodical, more sneaky, a guy that's gonna come up with a play that you won't see coming. I think he makes a lot more sense with quicker wingers. A guy like Alex Newhook, who would be able to carry the puck, who would be able to finish plays, who has that kind of release, but that can do it all super quickly. I'm not saying that Cole Caulfield is a slow player, but the speed of execution on Cole Caulfield's shooting mechanics is his speed. Everything else, like necessarily just like making a play or beating guys to the outside, he doesn't have that explosivity in terms of that speed that Alex Newhook has. Maybe that kind of speed and intelligence in play is a little bit more, how can I say, conducive to producing offense next to a guy like Nick Suzuki. Whereas I feel like Kirby Dach and Cole Caulfield were finding each other left and right last year, and one of the big reasons was that combination in terms of that top line success. Nick Suzuki kind of was the third man in most of those plays because Kirby Dach was so effective at A, gaining open ice, and B, sending pucks to open ice for players to capitalize. So it could work, in my opinion, splitting them up, but there's no rush to do so.
Sound good. I have more questions, but Marco, do you have anything you want to add more before I jump in for more questions?
Yeah, well, I just to kind of add on to that, like maybe that explains Suzuki's resurgence a little bit after Caulfield was injured last year, and they put RHP with him. Not that you're comparing RHP to to Newhook in terms of speed, but I see what you mean, right? Like somebody like to me, the thing that bugs me the most about the Suzuki and Caulfield combination is the puck dies. They're a little bit too one and done in the zone, right? Like Suzuki does chip the puck in a lot for Caulfield. Like next game, watch how many times Suzuki chips a puck into the corner, thinking that somehow Caulfield is going to go in and win that puck. It's not going to happen, right? Like maybe one out of every 10 plays that's going to happen, right? So I think Suzuki is might be better suited for somebody who is going to be a little more effective digging out those pucks. I think people's thinking is combining a player, like that's what Sandy Weave has been talking about, is finding a player that can dig out the pucks for them. But I'd be open to trying it for sure. Like, but Marko, you're 100% right about Suzuki. We were having this debate, about what makes an elite player. Coach looked it up, what was Patrice Bergeron's highest productions season in the NHL? It was 79 points, right? So would we all agree that Patrice Bergeron? But we would all agree that Patrice Bergeron. No, I'm not comparing them, right? But people sometimes equate being an elite centerman with a 100-point season. That doesn't, to me, points don't necessarily reflect being elite, So Suzuki could be an elite centerman, and I 100% agree with your definition. It's excelling at one or two. You know how they say like certain players, there's like different tools that players have: skating, shooting, hockey IQ. Like there's different tools. And sometimes you have a player that is like a 3-tool player, a 4-tool player. Well, Suzuki's tool, in my opinion, is being a two-way center. Like that, like the year that they went to the finals, he was actually getting pretty close to being a really dependable two-way center. Like he played a lot of important minutes. Like we know Danault had the really heavy lifting in that run, but Suzuki was pretty responsible. Even going back to the to the bubble against Pittsburgh, right? Like he's playing against Crosby, he's being responsible. But you're right, definitely a backslide last year for Suzuki with respect to his two-way game, and he needs to find that again for sure.
Great point about that. The biggest question has always been about Sarkowski for the last couple of days. So what do you do with Sarkowski? Keep him Montreal, send him Laval. If you keep him Montreal, what do you see him play with at the beginning of the season?
I think it's fair to start him in Montreal at this point. To send him to Laval now, I mean, it wouldn't make a ton of sense for me. I would, if he struggles, I would send him to Laval in short order. But I think you got to give him a good 10 games in a top 6 role to see if there's life, in my opinion, to see if this is just a question of shaking the rust or if it really is a developmental bump in the road and he needs to take a step back. I think you need to give him that rope. But unlike regimes of the past, when you see the faltering and it's not just a one bad game or two bad games, but it becomes a string of them, then you need to act. And I think that's what the Canadiens were close to doing last year, right before he got injured. I thought that there was a demotion coming real soon. Didn't happen. He was unfortunately injured, and that was the end of the season. But for me, he needs to be stapled to Kirby Dach. He absolutely needs to be stapled to Kirby Dach. And when we were imagining lines just before, I really wanted to see a Cole Caulfield, Kirby Dach, Uri Slafkovsky line. That to me would be a really interesting line. And then you give yourself the opportunity to build something a little different with Cole Caulfield, Alex Newhook, maybe a Sean Monahan when a guy like Christian Dvorak comes back from injury. So a little bit more flexibility. And what I like about that is ultimately you get to build something a little different. Right now, Slafkovsky doesn't necessarily have an identity on the ice. By putting him with a guy like Kirby Dach, you're teaching him, hey, this guy's going to put the puck on your stick. Get open to take shots. One of my biggest issues with watching Slafkovsky play is he doesn't know where to go on the ice. You play him with a guy who's going to put the puck on his stick. It's like soccer. Put the pass where you want the player to go, and the player is going to have to go there. You do those reps over and over again for a certain amount of time, you're going to know where to go simply by playing with that player long enough. And that develops the right habits to be an offensive producer at a regular pace in the NHL. I feel like he's getting the pacing right. He's getting this. He's slowly unblocking that speed, but it's positioning in the offensive zone, in my opinion, that's going to make the most amount of difference for him in terms of a scoring threat. Put him with a guy who knows where to place him. And I think that's a recipe for success. If he's not able to deliver at that point, then I would consider seeing what we can do in Laval and maybe calling up a guy like Emil Heineman who could play all of those situations, be it offensive or defensive.
Great. We have another question. William McClary said, do you see Montreal defensive metric improving and why?
Yeah, I don't. I don't in general. So I would expect guys like, say, Caden Gooley to see maybe an uptick. Jordan Harris already had really good advanced metrics. So did Jonathan Kovacevic. But really, it's at forward for me. You have to take this into consideration. The Canadiens had one of the worst power plays in the NHL, which means they got most of all their scoring at 5-on-5. And even then, with the crux of their offense coming at 5-on-5, most of that team was a negative differential team, not in plus minus, but in defensive versus offensive metrics. Goals against, expected goals for, expected goals differential. You look at Corsi in terms of being able to transition a puck, shots for versus shots against. To me, at the end of the day, you look at something like that and you go, how are they going to improve on that if they haven't really altered the team and they haven't really altered the strategy? So you're expecting players to get better, but it won't necessarily come through an analytical boost. I think it'll come through an on-ice eye boost because you want them to play a certain way. Once they get used to playing that way, that's when you're going to see the advanced metrics kind of go up because they're going to be executing at a far quicker, more efficient pace And at that point, you're going to see a little bit faster transitions and more scoring chances for. And that's probably where the Canadiens offense is going to take a leap. I don't necessarily think we're going to see it throughout the entire body of the season, but it wouldn't surprise me if throughout the second half of the season, we see it with a little bit more regularity.
So right about this, we're going to finish with the ab prospect before you go. I know you know many of them. One question is coming from Leon. Leon asking you about the ceiling of Davidson.
Man, isn't he a fun player? Jared is just really came out of nowhere in the WHL. Really good shot for a guy who was an overager. I feel like if he plays his cards right, he's an individual that can be either a center or a winger in a bottom six in the NHL. That's another feel good story, a la Raphael Harvey Pinard or a Xavier Simoneau that we're seeing right now in the Laval Rocket. Just a heart and soul player, was a really key cog in the Seattle Thunderbirds roster for the last 2 years as they marched to the finals and then championships in the WHL. We saw his shot. We saw his ability to move up the ice. If he can work on his explosivity, get that skating at least to NHL average, I think he has a future in the NHL.
We know. Look at Hudson is back now. Lane Hudson is back now with Boston. You have already a great weekend with Celebrini. What are your expectation for Lane Hudson, and do you feel like he's going to play with Montreal at the end of the year?
Well, I think if he reaches my expectation, he's probably going to be playing with Montreal at the end of the year because I'm expecting, based on what we saw last year and the fact that they're adding not only just Macklin Celebrini, but also Vancouver's first round pick, Tom Willander, on defense. That's probably going to be his partner. I'm expecting, and I don't want to take out the pom poms here, but I'm expecting Hobie Baker level play from Lane Hudson this year. He has to be, in my opinion, with the season he just had, one of the 3 best players in the NCAA. That's my expectations for him because he was already one of the 10 best players last year, the rookie. I want to see him build on what he's done. He needs to get to a point where he's excelling offensively to the point where it's unquestionable, like it was last year, but dominant defensively where he's thinking so far ahead of the competition that he's able to quickly get the puck out, start the transition, and go the other way. That's what you want him to do. And ideally, if he's able to do all that, he's got nothing left to learn in the NCAA next year. Well, you sign him to his entry-level contract, burn a year, let him finish the season in Montreal, and then we see where he lands in the training camp of 2024.
Well said. Marko, you want to add something about that, Lane Hudson? Or?
Yeah, real quick. I'm wondering with Hudson, like if he takes kind of like a page out of the Joshua Roy school of kind of how he dealt with his season, right? So in theory, he still had a very productive season in Roy, but he probably took a little bit off his offensive production to work on his two-way game. So I wonder if Hudson, on paper, for those who don't really watch, the games and everything, his production might be flat or maybe not as high as people think, but that's because maybe he'll work on his overall game because we all know that really the key for him to play in the NHL is still, work on the defensive side of his game, be a little bit stronger, especially on like stick on puck, right? So if I was him, if I was advising him, I'd be like, do your Hudson stuff for sure, because that's what makes you special. But I would really kind of be focusing on rounding out that other part of his game too.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that. But I mean, I expect him to focus on the defensive aspects of his game for sure. I think that's something that he's been told by the Canadiens, something he was told even by USA Hockey. But the thing to keep in consideration and the thing that I really want to put focus on is when you look at a guy like Lane Hudson and you look at the team that's going to be playing with him this year, Boston University looks much better this year than they did last year. A lot of their players are back. And then you throw in a Macklin Celebrini, you throw in a Tom Willander on top of that. Those are 2 big pieces in the NCAA. I have a funny feeling that Boston is going to be a little bit more of an offensive player this year than they were last year.
Last question tonight. We have a name. It's got Bogdan Konishkov. Nobody talk about him a lot, but he makes some kind of highlights in the KHL at the first month of the season. What do you feel about this draft by the Montreal 144 overall pick in 2023.
I remember when he was drafted, and everybody was going, "Who?" And the first thing that came to my mind was, "Oh, he's in the KHL, and he's 20, and the stats look good. Let me take 1 second and see who the coach is and how much time he plays." And last year he was playing 22, 23 minutes a game in the KHL as a 19-year-old. And the coach is Igor Larionov. To get Igor Larionov's trust at 19 in a league where no defenseman plays more than 20 minutes a game if they're under the age of 20, that told me that they're already right off the bat, without even watching highlights or any of his games, that told me, okay, there's something here. And then I was able to take some time, because I think I had maybe 2 weeks before my wedding. I was able to take like 4 or 5 days and go over some clips. And then you realize, okay, this is the kind of gamble you want to take with a fourth round pick. I would rather they go after a guy like him than drafting the Connor Crisps or the Lucas Veidemos of the past. Go get a guy who looks like he can be an NHLer right now, but simply is just the reason why he's falling is because he doesn't have the track record behind him. He came out of nowhere last year, and because he's signing an extension in Russia until 2027. But if that contract ends in 2027 and he comes over, it's going to be it's almost going to be a much better version of when the Canadiens finally got Alexei Emelin to come over. It's the same kind of situation, but he looks to be an even better defenseman because he's able to move the puck up. He's already the number one defenseman for Locomotive right now. And if you're looking at the global picture, he's one of the most used defensemen in the entire KHL, again, at 20 years old. So it to me, a very interesting, very fun kind of gamble in the fourth round. But it's, we're talking about him. It's going to be a long wait for Canadiens fans before they ever possibly see him in a Canadiens jersey. But it is fun to know that they have an asset like that in the organization that they could always trade if they feel like they're okay at right defense. They could always use him as a trade chip when he's closer to the end of his contract and might be willing to sign in the NHL.
Yeah, great. Marco Labi, want to add something before we move on and we're done with Marco D'Amico?
No, I think we're good. Like Marco, you've been really generous with your time, man. We really appreciated taking questions from our chat. And Coach, awesome to have Marco with us. You can see the knowledge, the class, it's really, really great to have you with us, Marco. Really appreciate it. Coach, are there any kind of last minute Hail Mary questions in the chat that we'll be mad if we don't ask Marco? I know our
A
chat's
few
really
of them,
been
but
looking
not a
forward.
few of them. We did about maybe missing about 7 or 8. But my one, I tried to resume all the questions at the same time because that question are similar. But one maybe we did not talk about is maybe Monahan case to complete the show tonight. Marco, they ask you about Monahan. You trade him? Do you resign him? Extension contract? And what do you fit him? For the roster and the line, first line with second line, like with Dak or Suzuki?
If Christian Dvorak is healthy, I would probably put him with Kirby Dach. If they're going to keep Suzuki and Caulfield together, and Dvorak comes back, I could see him next to Dach because he'll help Dach on the face-offs, the role of the center. I believe he's a left shot. Kirby Dach is a right, so they kind of balance each other out a little bit like last year. I wouldn't mind, but if he is healthy by trade deadline, he is 100% traded, 150% gone. And that's not because I dislike the player. It's because next year the Canadiens have to really make some room for kids coming up. Owen Beck may be ready. Joshua Roy may be ready. Emil Heineman may be ready. Sean Farrell may be ready. Whoever they Canadiens pick with their first round pick, depending on where they fall, may be in the NHL right away. It really depends. But you need to start making room for the kids. And he's been a really good veteran. And they brought him back on a show-me contract so he could vault himself into maybe the last long-term contract of his career. I think it would be mutually beneficial to both teams if he played out the season in Montreal healthy, put up some good points, and then went to a Stanley Cup contender. and played well into the playoffs to show teams, hey, I still got it.
Great
So
point
that
about
means you
money.
got
Do you think they should add another player like either UF3 or similar to that as on the off season? Like you talk about add or Y Islanen or Beck, but do you think Montreal could go that direction in 2024 or wait 2025?
I think if you look at their contracts and all the big contracts that they hate right now are all ending in 2025. Dvorak is ending in 2025. Jake Evans is ending in 2025. David Savard is ending in 2025. Um, Joel Armia is ending in 2025. So they're going to have all this cap space with all these youngsters on their entry level contracts coming up and the money to spend. At that point, I wouldn't even look to free agency. I would be looking at teams with restricted free agents that want to sign a big contract that they don't have the room to give them. And you go in and you give them a trade that alleviates them of their cap problem, gives them maybe a prospect and a first round pick, and you go and get yourself a top level talent like a Kevin Fiala, for example, or in the case of LA, a Pierre-Luc Dubois. That's the kind of trades I feel like the Canadians will need, and I don't think they're going to get it next year. But by 2025, I think the door is going to be wide open because the cap will have gone up twice by then, unless another pandemic hits, knock on wood, twice by then. And you factor in that all those contracts are coming to a T, and they don't have that many players that are going to be signing ridiculous extensions. I think that's the time to make a move. I think 2025 is going to be the summer where the Canadians make the big boom before they start taking off.
so I'm just
We never talk about
extrapolating.
Armia here. We don't want to talk about Armia, but you mentioned name Armia. A lot of fans, complaining about Armia should be shipped anywhere for nothing. Like it was same thing happening last year with Dadanov, DeWine, and Hoffman. What do you feel what the Montreal should do with Armia at this moment?
I mean, I think he has no choice but to play out the season, but I feel like it's a whole lot easier next summer to trade him with retention than it is to try to move him out now and or waive him and kill any potential value he has. Just ride the storm. He's probably going to be in and out of the lineup. Yeah, a kid could be taking that spot, but do you also want a kid being the 13, 14 forward at all nights? Maybe not. Maybe that you'd prefer to have them as the guy playing 20 minutes a night in Laval or 18 minutes a night in Laval. So that's the way I see it. Is just holding a place right now until the Canadians can get close enough to the end of their contracts that they can start shedding them.
Awesome. Marco Larabé, if we're going to finish this with Marco, so just anything you want to add a question before we move on?
Well, I guess I'm just extrapolating everything that Marco said. So one of my questions was, who do you think is going to start on the right of Suzuki and Caulfield? But based on based on what you said, I guess you're thinking that Newhook's going to start up there.
Well, I think Newhook's going to start at center because of Dvorak's injury.
Yeah.
But if there wasn't an injury to Dvorak, I'd say it's Sean Monahan, and they would probably have done Newhook, Doc, Slavkovsky for your second line. And then I think the third line, they really, really want RHP and Brendan Gallagher together. So we'll see what comes from that.
Awesome. That would be my sixth time I said that would be the last question, but I cannot leave you before we ask this question because we need to know. We need to select our prediction next week. So I want to know, what is your prediction for the Montreal Canadiens for the upcoming season? Standing wise, point wise, and the NHL draft 2024.
Yeah, I'm not going to be a very popular person here. I don't think that they're necessarily going to do any better than last year. The reason being, I think there's going to be advancement in progress from players, but I think that they may see regression in net. I don't think that you're going to have savior level goaltending this season as you did last season. And I think that may be the reason why the offense may go up, but the defensive impact may go down. And so they're right where they were last year. And I feel like, the lack of complete elite scoring, you can't just rely on Caulfield and for goal scoring, or even Suzuki for that matter. You need to have 5 20-goal scorers at minimum. Right now, I can only potentially see 4 at most. at most, and then that's problematic to me. So they would need a lot of guys to really go above and beyond to lift themselves up. There's obviously the defensive sophomore slump that could potentially happen as well. So there's a lot of ifs, and almost as many ifs as there were last year. And I don't expect the Canadiens to be anywhere near as injured, but injuries, and I know a lot of people bring up injuries. The Canadiens got a significant amount of value from their call-ups last year in terms of injuries. Like, yeah, you might have lost Joel Armia and Jonathan Drouin to a combined 150 games last year, and yeah, that's a lot of injuries. But Harvey Pinard scored more points than both of them combined. So, did injuries really hurt you? Not necessarily. Like Alex Belzil, same concept. Jesse Ullinen, same concept. Didn't necessarily hurt you. It looked bad by the end of the season, and I think at a certain point in time it catches up with you. But they got significant value from their call-ups. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be that much of a drop off this year. I think it's really going to depend on goaltending, which is the biggest cliche in hockey. So I would say 80 to 82 points, probably a bottom 5 to 8 finish.
Well said. Well done, Marco. That's what I said. That's what my prediction is, bottom 5. If I select number 4, NHL Draft 2024, who do you select?
That always depends on who's gone. If
Celebrity Alzeman is
right now,
out.
because again, right now, assume, because we're now seeing the rise of Anton Silyev, Knushiev's partner in Russia. If he comes into the top 3, and you also have Artem Levshunov, who's going to be playing in the NCAA this year, if he also increases his draft stock, we may see a guy like Ivan Demidov drop to 4. You also have a guy like Berkeley Cotton, who's already ripping up the WHL as we speak. I believe he has 7 points in 3 games. Those are 2 guys that I'd be looking at forward for the Montreal Canadiens, and they would instantly be their best forward prospect by a significant margin. And to my eyes, surefire top 6 players, if not top line players.
Now, Montreal going to have the same problem or same, between Michkov and Rebecca or Michkov with Leonard, whatever it was. He's going to be maybe Demidov versus the next one.
Yeah, well, I think in this year they have options in terms of forwards because everybody's going to be looking at defense, and I think that's where they're going to be able to play a little bit. And even if it's not those guys, there's Consta Helenius, there's Trevor Connolly, Mark Howe, all these guys in these, that are probably going to be in the 8, 9, 10 range. So there's going to be forwards available, but a lot of people are going to be focused on defense, while the Canadiens will be picking up the scraps at forward. And I feel like a lot of people thought maybe that's the wrong approach. To me, I say let's see what the board looks like on draft day in 2024, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. We're very grateful, thankful for your time. You gave your extra, again, over delivery, more contents about Montreal Canadiens with many questions we ask you. We look forward to you during the next time. We're going to join our Habs Nation. Again, we wish you. And the way to reach you, what's the best way if they would love to follow you? You writer, everything you do, you write every single day, whatever you do. What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, you could catch me on MontrealHockeyNow.com and on Twitter at MNDemico.
That's awesome. Marko Labbé, one more thing before.
No, just for anybody that doesn't follow Marko, like I said, he's honestly like a very distinctive voice. I think he said it perfectly, right? Like he comes at it from a very analytical point of view. So really, really good resource for Habs fans. So highly encourage everybody to go follow Marko. Marko, again, thanks very much, man. A lot of fun having you on. Lots of fun.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much.
All right. I'll see you next time. Have a good night, Marko.
Have a good night, guys.
Guys,
thanks.
Here we go, guys. We're not done yet. We're going to have a couple of more minutes to sit with you guys. What a great night with Marko D'Amico. I see him only one time per year and everything like that. But he and not like he's his hockey, but he's improving. Like you can see, he's more chicker about what he talk about. He's more into it. Before that, he was not involved around Montreal Canadiens. Year number 1, year number 2, he was just started his job last year. but just in 1 year, how he became now a little bit more solid, what he's talking about, a little bit more, go in deep about certain subject, and he can bring you, talk to you about everything about the Montreal Canadiens. So, great asset now, Marko, to have another Marko. We have a double Marko, and we have a double bad ball here, Mr. Nartap and Mr. Marko. So,
Yeah, maybe I'll have to take it all the way
you
down
have to
for
figure
next
out
show. Just
something about that for sure at some point.
yeah.
But what a great night with Marko D'Amico, guys. We thanks again. We apologize. We cannot take all your questions around. Marko have a 5-6 questions we didn't go through, and I cannot get apologize for Nicola de Gobi Bono. But we talked about a little bit earlier. We talked Nicholas asked a question. We talk about everything. So I tried to pick everyone. I think Enartal gave me 5-6 questions, but it was left and right, and then I try my best to give all of them, but we're only 90 minutes. It's not easy, but what a great night. It was fun to have Marko D'Amico with us. So we're not done yet. We're going to talk about a little bit about Montreal Canadiens, of course, for Marko D'Arabi. And don't forget, guys, to click on the likes. A few people knocked the door. We will come back. We have about 5-6 games in NHL tonight. Around 4 of them are complete. 5 games. 3 of them are complete. Devils beat the Rangers 5-2. The Detroit beat the Pittsburgh 2-1, and then the Blue Jackets beat the Buffalo Sabres 5-3. And right now the Oilers take easy 5-2 against the Calgary 0-0 Kraken and the Canucks. So we want to thank all the moderators tonight. We thanks everybody in the chat. We're not done yet. Don't forget to click on the like. That'd be awesome. At time it tide is in the house. William is in the house tonight. Yes, and again, guys, don't forget, if you want to, to promote this on social media, and Marko is going to be back with us. I'm not sure at the end of the month, but he will be with us in November, and he will definitely talk about the Montreal Canadiens. So that's happening. Marko, we talked about this earlier. What do you expect the Montreal Canadiens are going to do? First of all, before with that, Marko, if you don't mind, let's listen. Martin Saint-Louis talk about the retreat in Mont-Tremblant, and he talk about Mathis Nylander, and I would love you to talk more about Nylander after what he said, Martin Saint-Louis. Are you all right?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right.
It's everything. It's it's a chance. We have a couple new guys, right? And it's a chance for, these guys, integrate these guys into the, we've been pretty much at home the whole camp, so it's a chance to just get to know people better, get them acclimated with the group, and the guys that are here, it's a chance to strengthen the group, so it's something that I put a lot of value in.
What have you liked about Pearson since he's arrived here? What you've seen from him?
He's a pro. He's a pro. You can tell why he's been in the league for a long time, and he's been on a successful team.
This might be a bit my perception, it might not be reality, but it seems as though every time we see Norlander, he's got a smile on his face. He seems really calm, relaxed. How much do you think that's, if you believe that's reality, how much do you think that influences the confidence he's displaying on the ice?
Yeah, I think he's feeling good about himself, and I think that usually brings out smiles out of people, right? And that's contagious. He's at a really good camp. He's a good player, and for him to feel good about himself and showcasing himself the best he can, it comes with feeling good about yourself a little bit, and so I'm happy for him.
Some of the things in his game that are contributing to that confidence, and what are some of the things that he can inject in there to bolster it?
Well, I think he drives possession. He's very poised. He's comfortable on the blue line offensively. And to me, his compete level is just higher than it was last year at camp. And he's not a big guy, and he's good offensively, but none of that matters if you don't compete, and he's shown that he can compete. Like, he had tough assignments last game in Toronto. So, we're really evaluating all the way to the end here, and we've been happy for what we've seen so far.
Mathis Nylander, you talk about my question to you, Marko. Do you expect him to start the season with the Montreal Canadiens?
I do. Like, talk about a story of resurrection from the dead. Matthias Norlinder. Wow, like I would be hard pressed to find anybody from the Habs fan base that was really kind of talking about him. And coach, like it's every year there's at least one surprise in camp, right? And I think we tried to predict who is going to be like a wild card or like a dark horse in the camp, and I don't think any of us picked Norlinder, right? Like I was more on the Mishak kind of train for that, but I think like in terms of being on the second unit power play, I think he definitely has shown that he has the aptitudes for that. I think Sandy, we nailed it, right? Like if you look at kind of what he was able to do in previous years when he was up, it was about the compete level, right? Like a little bit nonchalant when it came to winning those battles. But it kind of comes down to me to kind of what I mentioned earlier, right? Some players, they just play better with pro players than they do with AHL players. Because if you look at Matthias Norlinder's game, for him, he's not going to muscle people off the puck. For him to get out of his zone efficiently, if there's like two guys bearing him on him, he's quick, but he's not super fast either, right? Like he's a good skater, but he's not like an elite skater. So for him, he uses his brain. So it means like he's looking for quick little outlet passes to whoever is going to come down, like hopefully the center that's coming down to the bottom of the zone to help him break out, right? So in the AHL, they're still learning how to play hockey the right way, right? So you think that a player like that is going to have a better time, kind of adjusting to playing in the NHL. So I think he will make the team. Like I was saying earlier, like I hope that if it's going to be a rotation, then hopefully they keep it a steady rotation so that nobody's kind of sitting aside for too long. But I definitely suspect, especially, and I'm a little scared, like when you see that Matheson is not practicing today, like, and then you have Monahan also that wasn't practicing. We're hoping it's not like a weird deja vu from last year that's starting to happen already. But if even with Matheson in the lineup, like I think it will be good for him to be on the second wave power play, because if you're not going to have Barron up in Montreal, he was really the only. Maybe Gooley can play second line, second unit power play, but I know they don't want really Gooley to play that because they're going to be leveraging him so much on 5-on-5.
Oh,
So
sure.
to me, Barron is so Barron would be the only one that you would give those minutes to on the second unit power play, but he hasn't really shown, again, that compete level, right? Like to me, what like Marko was talking about it earlier, like to me, the difference between Barron and Trudeau at this stage is Trudeau actually was beating guys one-on-one. Like he's actually physical on one-on-one confrontations, and Barron just isn't there yet, right? Like if you look on paper, like the raw skills, there's no question that Barron has all the raw skills, right? It just for whatever reason, he just doesn't have that gene in his DNA to be a little meaner and to really want to fight for those pucks. So I think he will.
Awesome. Marco, we have to stop here because we have a super chat, but my super chat was off. I have to make some modification. And my camera, guys, is working tonight so far.
Yeah, so far. That's very good.
So Sonoma, the new iOS I downloading, they create a camera on my bar, and now you can add some kind of emoji. You can click on it, so it look like if you are on. That makes some kind of problem right now on the Sonoma. So I turn off. That's what I heard from today. So I turn off so far. Looking good. But we'll see. But we have a super chat. Super chat, Mr. Rick Bengal. Rick Bengal did it again, ladies and gentlemen. Another super chat of the night. Appreciate a lot, Rick, to be another support of the Hockey Nation Live Show. Thanks to have Rick. We're almost at the 50 likes. This is the goal we try to get. So if you don't click on the like, guys, if you don't mind, that'd be awesome. To go there. I think we have Willie Snyder knock the door, Mr. Nartap. Willie, thanks so much to be with us. I think we go through the Montreal Canadiens enough tonight with Marko D'Amico. I think it will be better to go to the quiz right away and then come back tomorrow with the Montreal Canadiens, talking a little bit more what's going on with the team, and then prepare for the game again at Ottawa Senator. And of course, we're going to start it next week about the prediction and for what's going on, guys, for the Montreal Canadiens. By the way, I don't know if you saw this today, but that was the subject of the night with Marko D'Amigo. But I make a video today between two chairs, the Laval Rocket and the Montreal Canadiens. And the reason I did that, Marco, is because at the beginning of the season, we know about the chair from Martin Saint Louis. And I feel like some player right now are sit between both chairs for the
Yeah,
Montreal. So I think I make that video. I think, give another
it was a good one.
perspective about that. Thanks so much. And then I want to just give everybody, guys, Friday night is the final friendship quiz at 10:30. So you can join us live. It's going to be a live friendship quiz. Prior to that, we have the NHL draft fantasy hockey of the Hockey Nation live here. And Arta is going to pick the selection of the NHL draft 1 to 16 players. GM or participant are in the league for the season number 3. And finally, we're going to give the NHL draft is Sunday night at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. It's not live, but be ready on that one over there. And the locker room is not back next week, Wednesday, because of what, Mr. Marco? Because
there's an actual hockey game, a real hockey game.
A real hockey
awesome.
game next Wednesday. So we're going to do a Tuesday night. That night, we're going to do a lot of prediction in the upcoming season for the Montreal Canadiens. So we invite you to join us live next Wednesday, next Tuesday, again, October 10, 9 o'clock p.m. That's concludes everything we got as marketing about this. And then anything else you want to add before we go at the friendship quiz?
No, Coach, I'm ready to thoroughly embarrass myself. Let's go for it.
Sound good. We appreciate that. Let's move on to the quiz, Mr. 5 questions tonight. And hopefully you're doing well. We have now a little board. Yesterday in our tap, Andy Koivula win 24 at the 13th of the season. Then we have right now in our top number 1, following by Andy Koivula, number 2 at 13, Gary Conway at 12, RJ 11, Nicolas de Goubi-Bono is at 7. Forget about in our top 24-22. It was the winner of last night. Guys, don't forget, if you want to be at the final, you need to be live with us. It's not going to be on the chat. We have something specific. It's another kind of question we're going to do, a little bit like Jeopardy or something like that. So be ready on that one. Friday night, 9:30. We have backup, by the way. So maybe some people are going to join us live. Here we go, Mr. Marco. You are the only one tonight to figure out if you can get 3 and 5 tonight. Question, not too bad. I always said to you, 8.5 on 10. The difficulties are the question tonight. Not too bad.
I never trust what you say when it comes to how hard it is.
Talking about easy one, Mr. Marco. Which NHL team did not win any games so far in the preseason? The Ducks, the Canucks, the Predator, the Islanders, or the Wild? Good luck, everybody.
Ugh. Yikes. That's a long countdown. 1 minute?
Yeah.
Per question. Wow.
We're going to get there. October 5. Great performance of the Mr. Marko D'Amigo tonight, by the way.
Very nice to have him, man. He definitely knows his stuff. That's pretty impressive.
Rick Bengal looked like he go with A about that one. Randy, Ron with A. Willie with D. RG with B. Roy with D. Randy go with D. Claude go with A. Randy go with D. Ricola go with A. Here we go, Marco.
This is a pure guess because I obviously haven't been following all the teams as closely. But I get a sense that I know nothing about the Predators preseason. I haven't heard anything. But I know the Ducks, they didn't have all their team. Zegras was in there. So to me, it's between the Isles or the Ducks. So I'm just going to say the Isles have been playing New Jersey and the Rangers a lot. So I'm going to say D.
You go with which one?
D.
D, the Islanders.
Yeah.
So the team did not win any game so far in a preseason, right?
I don't know for sure. I'm just
All right.
guessing.
I don't know. Look like a lot of people said B, B, D, 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 A, D, B, A, D, D, B, D, A about that one over there, but oh my God, I don't know. And then so is the Nashville Predator on that one over
I
there.
haven't heard anything about their preseason.
Luciano Graziano go with C on that one. There is the only one got that one, the winner of this one. Congratulations, Luciano, for what I got here on this one for this first question of the night. Let's move on. Question number 2 of the night, Mr. Marko. Here we go. How many Bruins players were on the top 10 of the plus and minus last season for the Boston Bruins? 3 of them, 4 of them, 5 of them, 6 of them, or 7 of them. We know the Boston Bruins have an amazing, great year last year, Mr. Marko. And I forgot that clock. I know it's not a big deal. And we'll see what happening on that question. Who's going to get that right? Luciano is only one, got one so far. Luc Lafortune said B, by the way. Randy N said B. Randy changed it, but it was not there. Seattle take the lead 1-0. Willie Snyder go with E, 7 of them. Gary Conway go with C with 5. Only 2 questions, 2 answers so far. We have Andy, 11. Nicolas go with C. We have Claude Richard with C. B for Run with Kings for that one over there. We have Roy with C. We have D for Luc Lafortune. Here we go. Marko. Run with B, by the way.
I would find it very hard. Like, I know they had an amazing season, but like, so there's out of the top 10 players, how many did the Bruins have in the top 10 for plus minus? So for sure, you'd imagine. I don't know if Bergeron had enough points to be up all the way up there. So let's say McAvoy might be up there. Maybe, yeah. I'm gonna maybe 5. Let's go C 5.
5 for you.
Yeah.
So you go with C about that one with that. Oh my God! Yeah. You are right about that one, Marko. On that one, we have a few people knock the door. Gary Conway, Claude Richard, Nicolas de Gouby, but no, Roy and Marco Larrabee are now tied again with Luciano Graziano for question number 3. Let's move on. Here we go. Which player from this list did not reach 300 shots last year in NHL? Jack Hughes, Timo Meier, Mika Rantanen, Jason Robinson, or Alexei Ovechkin? Good luck, everybody. On last one, Luciano said C on that one. I'm 2-0. Yep, that's right, Luciano. I apologize for that one. I did not see your last answer. We have here we go. We got one here. Willie Snyder go with E. Randy go with B. Ron with B. Nicolas with C. Pierre Martin with E. Arju with D. Luc Lafortune with B. Roy with C. Thanks everybody to be with us tonight. Claude Richard with A. For Jack Hughes. During the time, Mr. Marko, you're thinking about who?
Yeah, I out of all these, like I don't think there's anybody that missed a whole lot of games. I think they're pretty much all played a lot of games last year. The only one that strikes to me is Meyer, maybe because I know, like when he moved to New Jersey, he didn't kind of like hit his stride completely. Like there's a bit of an adjustment at the trade deadline when he got moved there. So I'll go with B, Meyer.
Meyer for that one over there.
Yeah.
We have Andy Quivola with E, Luciano with E, Frankie Leonidis with E on that one over there. The answer, guy, is E on that one. Congratulations. A lot of people knocked the door on the E on that one over there. And we have Gary Convoyer is now at 2. But Luciano, guy, is 3-3. But we are goal from Willie Snyder, Pierre Martin in our tap, Andy Quivola score a goal. And Frankie Leonidis, I believe he's got into about that one over there. So we're going to add his score. And that's what we got there. Mark D69 is in the house. Mark, we miss you tonight. Hopefully doing well. That'll be it. Don't forget to click on the like. That'd be awesome. Question number 4. Which player below have the most goal against on the ice last season? Is it Provorov, Zader, Fowler, Pick, or Zeb Jones? Good luck, everybody, on that one. We'll see. Luciano, take the lead, 3-3.
Coach, did you watch the Blue Jays game today?
I did not.
I know you're a big
That's
fan.
2-0.
So, yeah, they're done. They're eliminated now.
Yeah. Luciano, if he win tonight, he's going to get his 5th W of the season. Luciano.
Wow.
Luciano. Here we go.
It's trending that way.
Mark go with D on that one. Ron go with B. So Zader is Jones so far. We have Ron with B on that one. I said Andy with B. Claude Richard with C. RJ with A. Look at person with A. Welcome back. Look quiet tonight. Look at Pierre Martin with A. Nicolas with E. Willie Snyder with A. A lot of people go with Provorov on that one over there. Frankie go with C. We have Roy with E. Here we go. During the time, and Arta go with E. Mr. Marko.
Yeah, so no coincidence that most of these are all of them are defensemen. Yeah, I would be shocked if it was Sider because Detroit wasn't nearly as bad as Philadelphia, Chicago, and Anaheim. I'm going to say Anaheim seems like they were probably right there with one of the worst goals against differential in the league. So I'm going to say Cam Fowler.
Cam Fowler about that. We wait for Mr. Luciano Graziano on that one. Gary Conway said B. Okay, I got that one. The only one we don't have is Luciano Graziano. Just wait a little bit more seconds. I think I have the rest of everyone in the chat. Luciano go with E. Zeb Jones about this one with it. Oh my God! And I win this one. Nobody got number D. It's a peak for the Columbus Blue Jacket. Is the highest number. We know Eric Carlson is the number 1 in NHL last year. But the peak had the most goal again last year in the NHL. And but he was right about what you just said earlier. So the winner is D, and nobody got the D on that one over there. So Mr. Luciano still lead by 3 at that moment. Let's move on, guys. Question number 4 of the night, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my God! Here we go. Number 5, I believe. I apologize. Is number 5, the last question of the night. From this list below, Marko, which goaltender gave the most goal against last season in NHL? Good luck, everybody. Here we go. Last question of the night. Last one of the night. The only one can tie the game is Gary Convoyer to Mr. Luciano on that one there. Can Mr. Gary Convoyer, if he win tonight, he's going to tie and the leaderboard with Andy Kuivula. Very important, by the way. Mark, go with E about that one. Nicolas, go with D. Thanks so much, Nicolas. Claude Richard, go with B. Thanks so much. That's what we got so far. Laurent, go with E. Abination, go easy one. Willie Snyder, go with C. RG with C. Frankie Leonidas, go with E. We wait for in our tap, Luciano and Gary Convoyer. All the 3-1. Luc Laforcine, go with D. Andy Kuivula, go with B. We're still waiting for Mr. Enartap, Luciano, and Gary Enartap, go with C. Pierre Martin, go with E. Now it's going to be between Gary and Luciano. We wait for Mr. Marko to tell us your answer.
I think it's got to be like a goalie that played quite a few games, right? And I don't think Reimer would have played enough games, and I think Hart was injured a lot of the year. I think this is a trick, right? So the two best goalies on here are Hellebuck and Vasilevsky. I don't think it was Vasilevsky, so by process of elimination, I'm going to say B, Hellebuck.
Hellebuck for that one. Luciano said Hellebuck too. And Gary Conley gets C, Georgiev. So if Gary is right, Luciano is wrong, but Gary tied the game. If Gary is wrong, it's over for everybody. Luciano win anyway at that one over there. And got guys on this one. I want to be sure, but which one is that, Marko?
B, Hellebuck.
B, Hellebuck. Oh my God! But for the second time, back to back, everybody is wrong. It's Andrei Vasilevsky with one of the 59 goals he gave again. Enartap gave back with second and option tonight, but it's not count on that one. And 2 on 5, everybody was wrong tonight about this one. But it's not good enough for everybody because the winner of the night, Mr. Marko, is Mr. Luciano Graziano. Well done, well said, Mr. Luciano. 3 and 5 tonight. Here we go.
Well, you were right. You were right that somebody was going to get 3 out of 5. It wasn't me, but somebody did.
I know. You're absolutely right about this. I played a lot of the game. Roy, you're absolutely right. Real said C. And that's happening about that one tonight. What a great show, Marko. I don't know if you enjoy it, but I think hopefully the people in the chat have a great time to have everybody like Marko D'Amico tonight with the Hockey Nation live show. And it was fun. I really enjoyed me to have Marko with us. And that's all. That's we gave the local room report show done. And we send the schedule under the 11 o'clock.
We made it. 3 minutes to spare.
That's pretty much about this. And what a great night, everybody. Don't forget, guys, to click on the like before you leave the building, for sure. And we want to thank Marko Larabi for his participation as a co-host with Marko D'Amico, our special guest of the night. But we want to thank other moderators tonight, Ron and Luciano, and of course, Enartap, all 3 delivery. Thanks so much, Rick Bengal, for your super chat. All the people, all members, we want to thank you for your contribution and to support the channel. And all the people pop up here every single night. We want to say to you, thanks so much. Until the next time, Mr. Marko, we want to remind you one more thing because you are awesome. You are amazing. You are the best. And remember, you have greatness inside of you. He has greatness inside of you, like everybody else in the chat. Thanks so much, everybody, to be with us tonight. Of course, we once said that be well, BL, find a way not only dominate your day, but find a way to dominate not only the first well, I was wrong about that one over there. Let's start again. Nothing wrong about that. You can make mistakes in life. And here we go. Be well, BL, find a way not only dominate your day, but find a way to dominate the second half of what, Mr. Marko?
your 2023.
He did it again. Have an amazing, great night, everybody. Remember, the Hockey Nation Show in the App Nation said to you, we love you, people. An amazing, great night. A sweet dream. Marko, we said thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Come on, get a grip now of all the ways we parted. You showed in your own way we would stand and we would fall united. Come on, get a grip now. Just finish what you started. Don't like the feeling that I've been fooled, deceived, and so misguided. Oh, oh, oh. What do I know? What's going on now? Is this another breakdown? You and me, should I let go? I do really want to know what's going on now. Is this another breakdown? You and me, should I say so? We're just putting on a show. What's going on now? Is this another breakdown? You and me, should I let go? I do really want to know what's going on now. Is this another breakdown? You and me, should I say so? We're just putting on
Have a good night, Lip.
a show.
Oh, 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 oh. Booyah!